I guess it's time to see if we can make chicken soup out of chicken shit. Hey y'all, everybody's favorite bumpkin here. This is not your normal way that we typically open a new episode of Ramblin' Parked. But, you know, hey, it's New Year's Day, 2025, first day of the calendar. It's time to tear that page off. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's try to mix some stuff up a little bit, okay? If you guys will recall, we have a ringer, if you will, for the new candidate for Ramblin' Parked. What that is that is Big Zed. That is a childhood wet dream slash daydream fantasy bike of mine that I've had tucked away in the back of my pointy little head for God knows how long. It's a 1994 Kawasaki ZX1100D. And for those of you that don't know, and for those of y'all that have been living under the rock without the advent of a internet connection period or access to various paper printed magazine articles, the Kawasaki ZX11 turned the sport bike world on its ear whenever it first popped up on the scene in the early 1990s. The ZX11 was basically a home run, hit it out of the park combination for Kawasaki because it was smooth. It had good ride. It had a good riding position. Also, the power delivery on it, which was severe at the time, was very smooth, almost to the point of being seamless like that of an electric motor. I can vouch for this because I got the chance to ride a couple of these things whenever I first pulled them out of the crate. What really made the ZX11 stand out for Mother Cow was the fact that it was comfy, it was reliable, it was oh my God fast, and then guess what? For 7 years, until Suzuki decided that they needed to throw their hat in the ring, the Kawasaki ZX11 was the fastest production bike on the planet that was commercially available. Back in the day, it was officially timed by Cycle World magazine, and I believe Motorcyclist as well, at an average of 176 mile an hour top speed, stone stock, out of the box, the way it was sold to the general public. Not sure if the marketing guys at Kawasaki thought that they were either working for or working against Darwin and his whole theory, but we're not going to get into that here. It's big, it's bad, it was holy shit that's fast, but it was deceptively smooth as well, because quite a few people found out shortly after this bike came to market is an ideal platform for long distance sport touring. They're very adaptable for hard bags or saddlebags if you prefer to go the lightweight route. There are many guys that have done iron butts on these bikes. There are many documented members of the Iron Butt Riders Association that have earned their iron butt on a ZX11. And there's been God knows how many thousands and thousands of miles racked up on a ZX11, connecting the dots from one side of the map to the other with a whole hell of a lot of fun thrown in the middle in between. Is it red? Is it not red? Is it stuck? No, it's not stuck.
No, it's not stuck. There was a whole line of bicyclists going down the trail a little bit ago.
Oh, we had a gaggle of lances make an appearance. Occasionally, they do pop up in the wild. Oh, by the way, sorry, y'all, I forgot. I got the beloved wife unit riding co-pilot with me today to where I can go pick up the hammer. I tempted slash bribed the beloved wife unit with the promise of food and fine dining on our way over to pick this motorcycle up. I'm not sure what her expectations are, but chances are mine are probably a lot lower than hers. For me, fine dining is Waffle House. That's damn near as fancy as I usually get on average. Now, once in a blue moon, whenever circumstances and life dictates it, I will actually polish my bumpkin ass up and I'll put on some nice clothes that I actually do look good in from time to time. And these occasions are usually something that involves a work function for the beloved wife unit. And basically, it's there in place just for the simple fact that I do not want to bring shame to my dearly beloved. And also, I do not want to have people look at her and go, wait, how we are so much of a polar opposite whenever it comes to our mannerisms, our method of speaking, how we behave per se in polite society, that most people have no idea how in the hell me and her managed to get together in the first place, much less how we've stuck it out for the last 27 years. Now, I'll admit, she ain't all pixie dust and rainbows. It's not a fairy tale princess story 100% of the time. But I love her. Let me repeat that. I love the shit out of her. She's over here trying like hell to keep from laughing her ass off. Anyway, how I came to be in the custody of this ZX11 is I had a channel supporter and a customer of mine at the Ride Factory. They had this motorcycle at another shop with another dude looking at it. I'm hesitant to use the phrase technician describing this guy because that would be an insult to all of my lifers and old heads and graybeards that's out there getting it done in the shop these days. You guys are the backbone of our industry. Keep doing what you're doing. But remember, pass that shit along, okay? Knowledge unshared, that's knowledge lost. We got to bring up the new crowd and the new bucks. This guy that had this motorcycle that was working on it, my customer took this motorcycle into him because it had an oil leak. Not a bad oil leak, but an oil leak nonetheless. This other shop told them that they needed a head gasket replaced. While head gasket failure is not uncommon, oil leakage from a head gasket failure on this particular model and this particular engine platform for Kawasaki, that is uncommon. So that's when I started asking questions. My customer had pictures in his email that this other shop had emailed him showing him where the oil was leaking from. He told him to go ahead and proceed with the work. They told him that he needed a head gasket replacement because number 2 cylinder spark plug tunnel kept filling up with motor oil. Now, when he made that statement to me, that immediately sent up a red flag for me because, number one, if you guys know anything about how the cylinder head in most inline 4-cylinder motorcycles is laid out, you're going to key in on the same thing I did pretty quick. There shouldn't be any significant amount of oil up above the spark plug area of the cylinder head to begin with. Number 2, if it's up above the spark plug area on the head, virtually the only place it can be coming from is a valve cover gasket or oil passage that's external on the cylinder head, like an oil supply line or something like that. Physics don't lie. Oil is not going to crawl uphill from a blown head gasket. They tore it down and they sent the head out to the machine shop, had the head resurfaced, yada, 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 all that. The problem there is, if you know what you're looking at and know what you're looking for in all these pictures, there's a lot of red flags that just jump up and scream, "Wave me" at the top of their lungs. Number 1 being, whenever they resurfaced the cylinder head on this bike, the pictures they provided to my customer, they didn't do any tear down on the cylinder head at all. The valves were still in it. I can assume that they had the camshafts out of it. They resurfaced this head with the valves in it. No disassembly on the valve train. How are you going to make sure that you don't have any machining swarf or any kind of debris that gets into the valve train or cross-contaminates the motor whenever you do that? I'm going to answer you real fast. You don't. It doesn't work that way. Another thing on these bikes in particular, and if you guys have been following Ramblin' Park for a while, you'll know that we've got a little bit of a coolant leak on the hinge teeth that we're dealing with, and that's from a coolant manifold that goes into the back side of the cylinder head, and it's got a couple of O-rings that are just a slip fit in there. That problem's not localized to ZL900 eliminators, guys. Kawasaki has an issue with that on a lot of their models, particularly when they age, because you got to consider, at this point, this bike is 31 years old. Rubber shrinks, rubber hardens, rubber cracks. You're going to get a leak. All of these pictures that they had sent my customer, the one common denominator in all of them, that water manifold was bolted to the back of the cylinder head in every single picture. And not only that, you can see the fasteners for that water manifold on the back of the cylinder head. They had not been touched. So I'm confident that that water manifold was never removed to have the O-rings replaced. And again, that's another potential point of entry for machining debris and things like that. So that's strike 2. Strike 3 came whenever they put it all back together. From what I've seen on the motor, I believe that somebody read the book and they tried to follow along with the book, but they interpreted it wrong in their head. Reading comprehension is a thing, y'all. Whenever I got the bike, because of the previous work that had been done, one of the first things I did was check the valve clearance on this because I thought, okay, somebody pulled a bonehead move and they goofed up on their math whenever they were setting the valve clearances on this head. Well, sometimes, a blind squirrel finds a nut, and that was me. The funny thing is, the ZX11 motor, they use a shim that rests in the top of the valve spring retainer, and that's how they adjust their valve lash. They don't have a screw and lock nut adjuster like the ZL900 did. If you guys remember when we had to dive in there on the first episode of Ramblin' Park over on the Shade Tree Surgeon channel, they have a thickness shim that lays in a machine pocket directly on top of the valve stem itself in the valve spring retainer. That's where things get kind of strange. It doesn't have a follower bucket like our more current motors that slips over the top of it. It's got a rocker arm that acts on a thickness shim that acts on the valve. Now you adjust your valve lash with the shims, but the camshaft doesn't interact directly with the valve at this point. Camshaft rides on a lash pad that's on the rocker arm itself, and then the rocker arm tip rides on the shim that's on the top of the valve. Kind of that whole hip bone connected to the leg bone thing. I'd suspected that they had measured their valve clearances incorrectly whenever they were setting the head up. I have no way of knowing that for sure, but the way the numbers came out, I'd say it's a pretty fair bet to say that was a safe assumption to make. The specs that Kawasaki advertises in a service manual, typically all the specifications they're going to give you for torques, clearances, tolerances, things like that, they're going to be in the metric system with little parentheses where they name off the measurements in imperial for Luddites like me that still refuse to adopt a system based on tens and ones. Now, in the service manual from Kawasaki on this bike, it says very specifically, but in very small print, mind you, that you have to check the valve clearance between the tip of the rocker arm and the shim on top of the valve. That could be a little tricky getting down in there to get a feeler gauge down into. Mother Cow knew what they were doing when they were warning people, hey, do it this way, because when the math stacks up, it has a different value for clearance if you're measuring between the camshaft lobe and the rocker arm follower pad. And what I suspect they did, whenever they were setting this head up at the machine shop, they probably assumed, okay, valve clearance, let's check it here at the cam, right? Wrong. It's not where you check it at. Just for the sake of argument here, because of the way the rocker arm ratio is in these motors, if you set your valve clearance at, say, 6/1000ths of an inch on the intake valve, and you're measuring between that lash pad on the rocker arm and the cam lobe itself, well, guess what? That evil thing called math and trigonometry comes into play when you're least suspecting it, and that 6/1000ths that you felt just damn sure and confident that you had for valve clearance right there at the rocker arm when you're measuring there, well, guess what? If you measure it the way you're supposed to, where the book specs you to measure it at, that 6/1000ths of an inch turns into a little over 9/1000ths of an inch. Let's call it a loose 9/1000ths of an inch, because, math and stuff. This motor was noisy. Like, not horribly noisy, but abnormally noisy. Kind of sounded like an old clapped out AMC Pacer that was about 2 quarts low on Pennzoil 30 weight. Just to add insult to injury on this, there is a specific procedure that you have to follow to correctly time the camshafts whenever you reinstall them into the motor. And I don't know whether somebody just overlooked it or if they interpreted the information in the service manual incorrectly, but not only did I find the valves extremely loose, the exhaust camshaft on this thing was retarded by 2 teeth. Not 1, 2. How it didn't smack the valves under the pistons is beyond me, but it's a miracle it didn't do it. I haven't done the math on that. I would say that 2 teeth on that cam sprocket with how many teeth are on the sprocket versus, 360 degrees in a circle, blah, 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 blah. Oh, fuck, stroke. Never mind. I can't do that in my head. Let's just spitball it. Let's just say that cam was probably retarded by a good 40 degrees, if not more. At the same time, they were doing this head gasket replacement to deal with this oil leak. They rebuilt the carburetors on this as well because, bike had been sitting for a little while because my customer was, was concerned about the oil leak. Okay, Carburetors. Yeah, now we're talking. I haven't dived into the carbs yet. Now, I will freely admit that I have already diagnosed the issues mechanically with the motor, and that was something that the customer requested that I do whenever he first brought the bike in to have me evaluate it to see what it was going to take to get it right. Oh, by the way, he still had the oil leak at the end of all this bullshit because, believe it or not, after building a head for this thing and after going through all that bullshit, guess what? They reused the old valve cover gasket and they didn't put any liquid sealer on the half moon saddles there at the end of the camshaft journals in the head. Not only did he have his original oil leak, it sprouted a new one. Go figure, right? Now, this bike ran when my customer brought it to me. Didn't run good. It barely idle, even with a choke on it. It did not sound happy. But luckily, there's no mechanical damage in the motor on this thing that we can't fix. This kind of leads into how in the hell I wound up with this thing. Let's be real here, folks. This is a pretty big undertaking to not only go in and correct all the deficiencies from the other shop doing the job wrong, but also the amount of time and investment that's going to be involved in getting this carburetor squared away as well. It's not difficult work, but it is tedious work, and it also is time-consuming work. Money is time. Time is money. At the end of the day, when you add in diagnosis time, time to remove the camshafts to retime them, then time to, correct the valve lash because that was out of spec. Every single valve in this head was loose. On top of that, build a set of carburetors for a bike that's got aftermarket exhaust, high flow air filter. On this particular bike, they also have a pressurized air box because of Kawasaki's ram air system. That's another thing that factors into the cost here is the amount of time investment. The quote that we, gave the customer, we tried to keep it as fair as possible, but those numbers got up there pretty big. He was trying to rationalize this out in his head, and he's like, man, I like the bike, but I just can't justify spending that kind of money on a 30-year-old bike. The bike's in pretty good cosmetic condition, all things considered, but for my customer, it came down to a dollars and cents thing. And that kind of explains how I came to be involved with this thing. My customer's a channel supporter, he's a Patreon member, and he's also a customer of mine personally at the Ride Factory with a couple of his other bikes. Just out of the blue, he called me up and he's like, hey, I really don't want to spend the kind of money that bike's going to need to get up and running, but would you be interested in it? And at the time, I'm like, well, I need another bike like I need a hole in my head, but I wasn't going to throw out a lowball offer to the man because I feel that's insulting. And I politely told him, I'm like, well, brother, if it was any other time of the year, we might do some talking. With what I've had to spend for getting the temple in order to where we can shoot videos over at the house, I really don't have it in my budget right now. And he come back at me, he's like, what if it didn't cost you anything? I'm like, wait, what? The long and the short of it is, I paid the gentleman's shop bill. He was kind enough to donate the motorcycle to us under the condition that, number one, if I ever want to turn loose the bike, he's got first option on buying it back, which I will absolutely give him that option. And number two, that we don't treat it any different than the typical clunker beater that we show up with here at Ramwin Park. I'm going to tell you guys, this is a 31-year-old motorcycle. It's got a couple of nicks and dings on it here and there, but all things considered, it's in damn nice shape. And we are on our way over to retrieve said motorcycle right now. However, think of that bribe that I made earlier in the video, okay? I have to stop by and feed and nurture and hydrate the beloved wife unit. So we're going to jump out of here for just a minute, and we're going to go do that, and we are going to have New Year's lunch, and we'll be back here in just a little bit whenever we are seeing this new motorcycle we're picking up. Well, we're here grabbing lunch, and we're in Ybor. Those are Ybor chickens. Thing is, we may get chicken for lunch, but it ain't gonna be one of those chickens because Ybor chickens, they're assholes. So now we got to make our way over to the Ride Factory, and we got to pick up the hammer. If I keep calling it that, that's gonna stick. Oh yeah, 7th Avenue Keep in Ybor. It's one of those faraway places that most people never think about, but it's kind of a one-stop shop because You can get a taco, you can get a burger, you can get a beer, you can get your kidney removed, all in one spot. You can also get shanked by an Ybor chicken down here too, because the Ybor chickens, man, they don't fuck around. They ain't stuck it out this long just because they're cute and fluffy. Oh, here we are back at the ride factory. Man, it feels like I was here just yesterday, which stands to reason because I was. And guess what, kids? I'll be here tomorrow too. Well, let's find a motorcycle. And full disclosure, I had enough forethought and I was like, oh, hey, wait a minute. I dug this thing out of the back yesterday. Yeah, it's kind of dark in here. I don't want to fight my way around the corner to go turn the lights on and everything, but we'll get you some pictures of this thing when we get outside. But here she is, guys. That is the ZX1100D. And somehow, somebody thought it'd be a good idea for me to wind up on one of these things. What the hell were they thinking? But not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth here, y'all. I got everything for it. I got all the plastics. They're back in the back. We're gonna go dig them out here in just a minute. But right now, since it's kind of getting towards sundown, getting kind of late in the day, we're gonna get this thing rolled outside. Let's get her strapped down on the trailer. Start taking it over to the temple. Let me go get the tie down straps, because I may need you to help me push this thing up on the trailer. Now, right about now is when I didn't realize the battery on my microphone had died. But we're going to give it the old obligatory boink, boink right there. That ain't going nowhere. High school marching band days die hard, y'all. Thank you, Rob Pucket. Now, what I've got in that box right there is carburetors, a few trim pieces, the ignition coils, and a few bits and bobs that I didn't put back on the bike just to transport it over to the temple from the ride factory. Now, really, the only downside on this motorcycle is this Hobby Lobby-esque clearance aisle at Walmart. Hell yeah, brother, spray paint graphics they put on these fairings. But the good news is that'll come off with some Goo Gone real easy. Hey, you. Yeah, dummy. The one that doesn't realize his microphone's dead. Sorry about this, guys. Anyway, we got the bike loaded up, got it tied down. At this point, something's going down pretty quick, so we decided we was going to beat feet back to St. Pete. Hey, look at there, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. Anyways, heading back to the house, there was a couple of things here and there that I was talking about, basically just rambling and talking to myself in my head while I was traveling, as I'm wont to do at times. But a couple things that I wanted to point out on this bike. We're going to take our time with this thing. This bike is a survivor. It's a 30-plus-year-old testament to where our industry was at the time in the early 90s, and it's also a testament to the abilities that the engineers had when they put a pen and pencil together and they come up with this motorcycle, and then they put it together with their own two hands and they unleashed it on the general public for people like me to get a hold of. Man, I'm not exactly sure if they were ready for that or not, but hey, here we go. Now, me and the wife unit were talking back and forth while we were driving back home, and right about this time in the video right here, whenever we were getting on the Howard Franklin Bridge, going from Tampa back over to St. Pete, sun was going down, and it was damn pretty. And I just happened to look over at her, and I was like, you know what? We've had some good times, and we've had some bad times, but we've had more good times than bad. And whenever you look out the window and you see a view like that, and you're fortunate enough to see it virtually every day, considering it was 70 degrees today and I was in full blown flip flop regalia on, New Year's Day, it's, it's kind of hard to, feel bad about that. At the end of it all, life ain't that bad. Also, I wanted to take a minute to remind everybody that the access portal and access link to the brand spanking new Joe the Mountain Jedi Discord channel, it's over on the Patreon page. Now, the reason that we're doing that is because we are currently and continually building a members map. That way we have resources available if people are out traveling, or if you got somebody in your neck of the woods that may need a little bit of help with a problem they're having with their scooter. If you can help them out, It helps everybody get together and connect. That way we can support one another. That way we can grow together. We can learn together. Remember, guys, knowledge unshared, that's knowledge lost, all right? So let's pool our knowledge. Let's get all that together in one spot. And that way we can help enrich one another and help everybody grow and help everybody progress into the sport that we all love on two wheels that brought us all together here in the first place, okay? Anyways, I just want to let you guys know here's what we're doing, here's what it is, and don't forget, I love y'all. I appreciate the support that every single one of you guys has shown us up to this point. I hope like hell 2025 is good to each and every one of y'all, because so far it's been damn good to me, because I get to share time with people like you here on the YouTubes. Anyway, guys, I love y'all. I will catch you on the flip side, okay? Take it easy now.
Force will be with you, always.